Easy peeps. Um, Wanted to share another video with you. Um, some of you probably watched my previous one, observing spirituality, that I shared. This one's going to be a bit shorter than the last one, basically. And you know, I wanted to in this one kind of focus particularly on life and our perception of life, the way that we look at life. Over the past few years, I've been kind of developing a whole new way of looking at things, and a whole new way of looking at the life that I'd come to know, the life that I presently experience, and the way that I look towards the future and so on. And we kind of okay, I'm going to use the word conditioning. We I spoke before in my other video about the way that we learn to observe, and the way that we learn to see things, and the way that we learn to communicate and stuff. And so we're kind of shown this method of communication. We're shown this method of understanding things. We are ultimately we're shown an image or an object, and then we are given an explanation as to what this image or object is, which we then adopt as our means of explaining and understanding. So it's like, we are initially we see a ball, although we don't know that it's a ball at the time. We see a ball, and then we are taught that this is a ball. And this is the same process that we follow from infancy. As we're growing up, we follow this sort of process of learning, and then eventually words then eventually replace the image, kind of thing. But what I've started to realize is that in truth, even though this is the way that our education process goes, we follow this process of education through all of our schooling and stuff, but it's not the way. We never move away from the attitude of learning. You see it, and then you learn to associate yourself with it in a way, and then subsequently follows the words, the explanations and stuff. It's the same process that we follow throughout our entire lives. You think about when you go to I went to college. When I left school, I went to college, and I trained as a machine woodworker. And I was at college for about 3.5, 4 years or something like that. Now, and I'm pretty sure it's the same now for anybody that sort of goes through this educational process. It's the same sort of principle. And basically what it is when I went to college, we've got all these machines and stuff that I was learning to use. But that weren't the whole gist of my time at college. I didn't just go into a workshop every day and mess around with machines. My days were broken up with theory, basically. So a lot of the time we'd be sitting in a classroom, and our lecturer was writing on a board or handing out handouts and books and stuff, and we'd be learning from all of this. So this was the process that we followed. We would have the practical side of things, but then it was kind of almost equally balanced with this theoretical side of things. And there's a reality that I kind of come to realize, and it's like we more often than not, we're not interested in the theory. We don't really want to know about it. I remember skipping forward a few years, and I enrolled on a course, a music production course. And I remember the first year was great. There weren't many people there. It was a relatively new thing that we was doing, and it was before everything started to go all PC crazy. So we was doing this music production course on Ataris, and And I remember, we had the sampler and Akai S1000 sampler and stuff like this. The geeky ones out of you that of you that watch this, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, and it was for a year, and it was predominantly practical. The course was predominantly practical. There was little bits of theory lessons thrown in there and about music itself and stuff like this, but there was a lot of practical work involved. And then after the first year, I got the chance to enroll for a second year, and it was like the second year was by the time the second year came along, PCs had started to take over the game, and I remember I went to I enrolled and I went along to the studio where the first sort of lessons were taking part. And no, sorry, the first few lessons were theory. So we went along to the classroom, and there was probably about half a dozen people in the classroom. And I remember sitting there and thinking, oh well, this is all right. There's not many people here, so there's plenty of room. And we went through the theory lessons, and there was one or two theory lessons, and then by the third lesson, it was practical, and it was at the studio. And but by this time, the first year we just had one computer, one Atari, and it was set up with all the bits and pieces, and we were all sort of using this one computer. And it was great. We learned a lot of the first year, but then by the second year, they must have had a grant chucked at them or something, and they'd gone out and invested in a load of PCs and stuff, and these little controller keyboards, and there was probably about 20 PCs in this room, and but the room was packed. There was more than the 6 people that had attended the theory lessons. So obviously, what this sort of highlighted, yeah, at the time I was pissed off about the idea that I couldn't get to sit down. Me and my sort of standard practice. I turned up late. So by the time I got there, all the PCs had been taken up, and everybody was 2, 3, and 4-fold around one computer and stuff, and it did my head in. So I just left, and I never went back. That was my impatience. But what it highlighted is the fact that we are still very much attached to this process of learning. The theory side of things, we're not really that, whatever. That's the typical attitude. We're not really that fussed, but we want to get hands on. And in reality, anything that you want to learn, as I see it, you could learn to do absolutely anything in 2 or 3 months. If you have the opportunity to be hands-on and practical, you can learn a lot in 2 to 3 months. You can get the bare basics of most trades or most crafts or whatever in the first 2 to 3 months. And I'm not saying that you'll be a master. You'll be a bit sloppy at it and stuff. They call it muscle management, muscle memory. That's it, muscle memory. You try something new. And basically your muscles have to learn how to do this process. When your muscles get to grips with this process, then you will start to pick it up more yourself, and you will start to it's like you start to do things more naturally. And it's the same process that you follow. You go and you get a new job, and it's the same process. You have 3 months trial or whatever. You've got 3 months to prove that you are going to be worthy of having this position, and this 3 months is enough for you to take on board everything that you need to adapt and sort of teach yourself how to do the process, to do the job that you're there to do. But ultimately, your body is essentially learning how to go through the process. Whether it's your hands, whether it's your feet, whatever it is, you need to look this way, you need to look that way, you need to do all of this sort of stuff. Your body is learning how to do the process. So it's like, You can be told how to do so many things, you can have all these explanations, but it's like the instruction manual when you get and you buy an IKEA wardrobe or something. And you might have noticed this yourself, is that what I found is that you look at a lot of instructions now, and there's less words and more images. Whereas before you'd have like 1,000,000,001 components, and they'd all have letters A, B, C, D, E, and 500 screws of this length, and so many dowels or whatever of that length, and a shelf, and this and that. And you've got all these components for your wardrobe, and they've all got letters in the instructions. And then you'd have this explanation, and like a big essay of explanation. And typical bloke, myself, I cut to the chase, and I'm like, well, all right, then I'll try and figure things out before I mess around with the instructions. But the thing is, now you look at instructions, and a lot of instructions, they don't have the same uh, amount of writing now. They just rely on images. So you'll have like several different images of the process of assembly of this particular object. And obviously, you'll still have all the components and stuff that are listed and or what have you. But it's gone. It's as if things are going back towards this whole idea of learning through image, and this is precisely what we do, and it's precisely what we've always done. Since being infants. You know, if any of you watching this have got kids, watch your kids. I've got kids. I watched my kids, and then you remind yourself of the whole process that you followed yourself. And a child, you watch a child, you don't teach a child how to walk. A child already knows how to walk, but the child has to learn to associate what it sees with its muscles. So it's like my perspective of a child is that they are effectively it's like a blank canvas. The brain, the memory, and the processing ability, they are much more readily able to process information than so many of us as we grow older, because we become so much more limited in our perspective and our outlook. But an infant just wants to learn things. That's all they can essentially do. They can learn. They want to take as much on board as they possibly can. So what they do is they will watch you from the moment that they're born. They'll watch you walking around every day and doing all of this and picking stuff up, and they'll watch how you act and how you interact with your environment and stuff. And if you ever take the time to see an infant in a pushchair or something, and they're watching everything, and sometimes you'll see them fix their gaze on something in particular for quite some time. It might even be your face, and it's like they're studying your face. And this whole process of observation, it's painting images on this blank canvas of their mind. So when a child, normally around the age of 1, and they start to show signs of wanting to walk and stuff. So, as a parent, we often try to sort of urge them to get walking, and we're egging them on to some extent and stuff. So we don't teach a child to walk. They already know how to walk. What they don't really know at that point is how to associate the thought of walking with the experience and the muscle memory, basically. So they have to try and get this coordination, this mind body coordination. It's like, right, I've seen people do this. I've watched it for all these years. How do I do it? What have I got to do to make this work? How can I, get this process working for me? And then next thing you know, they're walking. But then before you know it, they're running, because they want to stay up. They want to stay upright. An infant's head is quite heavy and stuff. Once they get on their feet, they're going to be a bit wobbly. But what you don't see in an infant is they stand up, and you don't see them thinking about, oh no, I'm going to fall over. You see them thinking about, how can I stay up? So next thing, they're running across the room and stuff, and we're sitting there horrified as parents. But that's all they're thinking about. There's no fear about falling over. So this is the process that we follow. We follow this process from the day that we're born. We follow this process of learning. We see We see something, we take it on board, we learn how to turn this process around so that we can do it ourselves. We see somebody do something, we take it on board, we learn how to turn it around. Whether it's sport, whether it's trade, whether it's something at home, something simple, it could be absolutely anything. But we have to see it. We have to kind of study it with our eyes and in our mind. We have to mull it over for a while before we can process it. So when you're of a working age, you've left school and all this kind of stuff, and you go into work, it's the same process that you follow. But we kind of lose connection with this ability that we've always had. We've lost sight of it. So when you go to work, you spend ages looking for a new job and stuff like this and whatever. And then suddenly you've got this new job. So now you've got a job, and the first thing you're thinking about is, oh, I hope it's going to be all right. I hope I'm not going to struggle too much and all that kind of stuff. Then you start your new job and you meet your colleagues and what have you, and they're showing you what to do and stuff. And it's exactly the same process that you follow, that you followed and you have always followed ever since you were an infant. But the difference now is you started to doubt yourself. We start to doubt ourselves, we start to doubt our abilities, and we start to see things from this kind of jaded perspective. All of a sudden, we see ourselves as potentially not being capable of doing whatever it is that we're there to learn. Um, and, it's kind of when you think about it, it is kind of bizarre because, in reality, one of the most complicated things that we ever learn to do is walk. Even talking, learning to speak is another very complicated thing that we learn to do, but we learn to do it and we grasp it so simply and readily because we don't know the thing that opposes the ability to learn something. We don't know inability. We only know what it is that we want to do. We only know that we want to speak. We only know that we want to walk. Or rather, we want to get from A to B. Even if you're a bum shuffler, for the first year and a half of your life, and you learn to get from A to B on your backside, scutching across the floor or whatever, you've still figured something out. You know what I mean? You've still worked out how you're going to get from A to B. But then, like I say, we get to this age and we go into work and stuff, and you know, we it could be a relatively straightforward job that we're there to do, but we've now adopted this filter mechanism, and this filter mechanism is basically like a lens that's the lens of how can I put it? The lens of doubt. So now all of a sudden we look at this whole experience through a lens of doubt, and you know, and it's that doubt that actually adds to the complication of the whole learning process. Um, and I can speak about this, you know, on a personal level as well, because it's like, and some of you will know that I've been playing the guitar and stuff, and I kind of really changed my perspective about learning. And I've spoken to a few of my friends about this in this way as well. Is that I don't tell myself that I'm learning to play the guitar. I tell myself that I'm practicing the guitar. The guitar is my practice. Playing the guitar, this is my practice. In the same way that you go to see a doctor, you go to see a doctor at the doctor's practice. This is where the doctor practices being a doctor at his practice. So I pick up the guitar and I'm not learning the guitar anymore. I'm practicing the guitar. And it might sound something simple to you, it might sound unnecessary and whatever. But my perspective is this. If I accept the fact that I'm learning to play the guitar, then I've accepted the idea that I can't play the guitar. And, and that's the key thing. To accept the fact that you can't do something is, it kind of limits your ability to learn. And this is entirely my own perspective, okay? I'm not telling you that this is the truth. You can figure it out for yourself. I will always say this. You can figure it out for yourself. But to me, if I accept that I am practicing the guitar, the first chord that I learned when I picked up my guitar was an open chord. You know, if you know anything about chords and playing a guitar, the first chord that I learned was the G major chord. And I remember I bought a cheap guitar from the second-hand shop for like 20 quid. And I'm sat there and I spent about 3 hours playing G major, right? This G major, it's three fingers on the three strings, and I was playing this same single chord for like 3 hours. You know, I'm strumming it, I'm plucking it, I'm doing all of this kind of stuff, and I was really amazed at the fact that I was playing a chord. You know, this was alien to me prior to this. You know, not even 2 years ago, it was completely alien to me. I never even thought about playing the guitar, but now here I was playing a G major. You know, and I was like playing it and how softly I could hit the strings and it would still ring out and all this kind of stuff, this acoustic guitar, and it was amazing to me. It was fantastic. But I was playing this G major, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm playing a G major. You know, I'm playing the guitar. I'm playing G major on a guitar. So to me now, it's like even if you can only play one chord, you are effectively practicing. This is practice. You're not learning to play anymore. You are playing the guitar. You know, and it's as simple as that. You can play the guitar. Okay, so you might not be able to play a song at that stage, but you can play a chord. You know, that's a chord on the guitar. You can do it. So to me, it's not about learning anymore. It's about practicing. And this is my whole mindset towards our sort of abilities and efforts to learn. You know, I firmly believe that we have this uh, desire. We have this ongoing desire within us to learn. We always want to learn stuff. You know, the thing is, we dismiss this ability, this desire to learn. We lose it because we substitute it, and what we substitute it with is TV and stuff on TV, and you know, TV shows and what have you. We substitute it with you know, the news and stuff like this, games consoles, and so on and so on. There's all these different things that we've got in our lives that kind of restrict our desire to learn. And you know, okay, if that doesn't sound like a plausible thing, you know, it sounds like rubbish that I'm saying. Think about it from this perspective. If you get a video game, you buy this video game, it's brand new. You don't know how to play it. You have no idea. You have to learn how to play this video game. Okay? That's your desire. If you sit there in front of a TV for like 5 straight hours every evening, um, you are learning something because you are learning what's on the news. You're learning what the news has to say about the rest of the world. You're learning what the weatherman's going to tell you about tomorrow and the rest of the week or whatever. You're learning what happened to Deirdre on Coronation Street or Phil Mitchell on EastEnders or whatever. If that's your thing, it's fine. You know, I'm not knocking you for it. I spent years watching all these shows and soaps and stuff. That's how I know the names. But the what I'm trying to say is that this is the process that we follow. And the thing is, when we follow this process, is it starts to get kind of uncomfortable and painful. This is what I found for myself. It starts to get uncomfortable and painful because it's like there's you begin, and I say, like I said, from my own perspective, begin to feel unsatisfied, or is it unsatisfied, dissatisfied, whatever the word is, because you know your program finishes, and then what? You know what I mean? You know, then what you're gonna do? So it's like this is how you end up, you know. So okay, oh, what am I going to do now? Okay, I'll go and get some junk food out of the kitchen, come back, plant my backside back on the sofa for a few hours, flick through the channels until there's something else that I can find that's watchable, you know. And then you end up watching something else for a while, and before you know it, your whole evening's gone. And this is what we do. This is what, you know. But then you add couple that with the idea that you might be going to work every day for 8 hours a day or whatever. You leave the house at 7 o'clock in the morning, you start work at 8 o'clock, you finish work at 5 o'clock, you come home from work, you're home for probably 6 o'clock, you do your tea, you sit down in front of the TV. But the thing is, you're doing the job that you do, and it might be the same in your job. You've been doing the same job for so many years, and it's a repetitive thing. You're doing this over and you're moving it to there, and you're doing all this, you're operating machines or whatever, and it's a standard practice, standard procedure. There's no change in there in what you're doing or whatever. There's nothing exciting anymore. It was probably exciting for the first couple of months or whatever, but once you've got it nailed, it's boring. And I'm speaking from experience. It gets boring, it gets stagnant. Your mind starts to get desperate. And before you know it, and this again from experience, when my mind starts to get desperate, I start to act like a fool. Do you know what I mean? And I start to do things that I know ain't going to serve me in the long run, but I will start to do random stuff and start mucking about. Because it's this desperation. And I kind of see it. We've got this thing in society, and most of you, or if not all of you, will be aware of, called ADHD, attention deficiency, or something like that. And I've seen and I've spoke to a few people that have been diagnosed with this idea, and to me, okay, everybody else might have their different perspectives and opinions on it, but to me, if you are not stimulated enough in whatever it is that you're doing, and you are being forced, to do or to be in this environment, in this situation that doesn't stimulate you, right? It's going to go one of two ways. You're either going to repress yourself and be that quiet person who sits there and says nothing, does nothing, and doesn't even speak for themselves, or you're going to be a pain in the arse. Do you know what I'm saying? And this is just how I see it. So when you see a child that's diagnosed, or somebody that's diagnosed with this ADHD, personally, what I see is somebody that knows this, but they don't realize it. They know that whatever they're doing isn't stimulating them enough. They want more, but they are being sort of suppressed, I think the word is, in their ability to learn. So they have to try and express themselves in another way, which is basically to be a pain in the arse or whatever, or as they are perceived. So this is me. I had this experience where I'd be working in factories and stuff in my past years and what have you, and I'd get to the point where it starts to do my head in. But in my own ignorance, I didn't have the mindset to be able to say, well, you know what, I've gone as far as I can with this. It's time for me to move on. In my own ignorance, my past mindset, I would see this problem of me being not being having fulfillment in what I'm doing, and then I would kind of start taking it out on the experience as opposed to changing my experience. So this is how I see things, and this whole process of learning. We have this desire to learn. We want to learn new things. It's like a deep rooted need, a deep rooted desire that we all have. And like I say, for the majority of us, we will sit here and we will, we instead of kind of elevating ourselves to this point of saying, right, okay, this just isn't fulfilling me enough. This isn't beneficial to me. This doesn't do, it's not doing anything for me. What can I do? And I've spoken before. I stopped watching TV some time ago. You know, not because I have a problem with TV, okay? You've got all kinds of different ideas and stuff about TV. But my personal thing with TV is if I'm sitting there watching TV, right, then I'm losing out, okay? Now, I'm not saying, like I say, I don't have a problem with television. I do watch some programs and stuff. I might go to somebody's house or visit somebody or whatever. And and I'll sit and watch a program or whatever, and there are some good TV series that are out there. I know this. I do like to watch films every now and then as well. But if I was to go through the same process of watching TV shows and stuff, there's a few TV series and stuff that have been on that I've wanted to watch, even if I watch it online, I've wanted to watch. But then I watch the first few episodes and I'm like, oh God, this is going to go on for quite a few episodes. And what else could I be doing? So I'm kind of weighing up the pros and cons. I suppose with me, it's like, I'm going through this process of learning to how can I put it? I'm going through this process of learning to manage my time better. So you never know. I might at some point be able to slot in a TV series or something like that. But at this key stage in my life, at the moment, all I seem to do is whenever I sit down for 5 minutes, I've got a guitar in my hand. I'm not complaining about it, but this is the whole process and the desire to learn. I really want to learn more and practice more about my guitar, and as a result, I have done really well with it, and I have sort of got quite far with my practice as I see it and as I feel my on a personal level. I've got quite far with my practice, and I've I've been practicing my solo stuff and what have you. So it's all good. It's all progressive stuff, and for me, it's all totally beneficial. So just to reiterate and to recap, the whole process of learning, we've always had this process of learning, and this process has always been see it, take it on board, learn to kind of reiterate it, learn to mimic, learn to copy, learn to do it for yourself. Whether it's speaking, whether it's walking, talking, anything that you've experienced in life, we've always followed this same process. The gist of it all is, if you do something, you want to learn something, then there is some theory work involved. Is to learn to see beyond the theory, because a lot of the time we can be put off by the theory side of things. um, and I suppose it's like me and again playing the guitar. I've sort of learned and taught myself for the past nearly 2 years, as I said, and I've been teaching myself. Now, I came into playing the guitar from the practical side of things, so it was straight into practicality, straight into hands-on. But since I started to get the gist of playing the guitar and stuff, then I've gone back and started dipping into the theory side of things. This is how I've sort of started teaching myself. So I start to see things then from a different perspective, and I start to want to incorporate these things into my practice. Whereas obviously the standard way of learning things is you get hammered with all this theory and all this writing and all this history and all this blah 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 blah, which is great. I'm not knocking it, but some of us just don't work like that, and that's the whole process of learning. Is we all there are different ways to learn. Some of us do gel towards the theory side of things, and some of us uh, tend to lean more towards the practical side of things, or you might be more practical in some types of things and more theoretical in others. Each their own kind of thing. But what it all boils down to in this whole sort of video is our ability and desire to learn. We have this desire; it is within us, and the more we can kind of wake up to this. you know it's like another step out of, okay, it's a step out of your comfort zone, but your comfort zone in reality is not a comfortable place to be. It's just somewhere where you've just become so accustomed to being that you don't know anything else, kind of thing. You know what I mean? You sit there and you go through the same process, but I'm willing to bet that the absolute majority of people that watch this video, you have these moments in your comfort zone and you're sitting there thinking about things that you wish you were doing, you wish you could do, you would like to do, or blah, 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 so on and so on and so forth. We have these thoughts in our minds, but we don't pursue them because it means getting out of our comfort zone, or discomfort zone, because that's what it is. You sit in your comfort zone for long enough, and all you're doing is you're trying to do things to keep you there, um, which you don't really need, which ain't really that beneficial. That's always the case. So yeah, that's the process of learning, is always to visualize, take it on board, then sort of translate that information into muscle movement, which then, after a period of time, becomes muscle memory, which means that it ultimately becomes second nature. You learn to do these things seemingly without thinking about it. The thought is still there, but it's on a subconscious level. On a conscious level, you don't need to think about it in the same way, because you've already got this subconscious programming, and your body is following that process almost on its by its own accord. So yeah, that was my today's speech, today's video, all about our desire to learn, basically. Hope you like it. Keep an eye out for my next video, and I'll speak to you soon. Peace.